In the dazzling brilliance of Dubai's skyline, where ambition burns as brightly as the city's golden towers, the shadows of wealth and power hide stories darker than the Arabian Night. This is not a tale of glamour or romance. It's a story of human weakness, forbidden passion, and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. In a world where appearances mean everything, one family's pristine image shatters under the weight of lies and betrayal. What begins as a secret affair between two hearts longing for escape spirals into a storm of jealousy, deceit, and ultimately murder. The question is no longer just who is guilty, but why love turned so dark and what it reveals about those caught in its web. In the golden city of Dubai, where luxury and secrets often collide, a story unfolds, a story of forbidden love, betrayal, and a crime that would shake the foundations of a wealthy family. What starts as an intense and passionate romance between two souls soon takes a dangerous turn, leading to a shocking disappearance that leaves everyone asking who could be behind it. What secrets were they hiding? How did love turn into a crime so devastating? As the layers of lies and hidden desires unravel, the truth will leave you questioning everything. Stay until the end to uncover the dark side of love and betrayal that will leave you speechless. Sahiba's life seemed like a dream come true. She was the new bride of Zaman, a wealthy and respected businessman from a powerful family in Dubai. At 30, Sahiba believed she had finally stepped into a life of luxury and love. Zaman was everything a woman could ask for: charming, responsible, and generous. They had met through mutual connections, and their whirlwind romance quickly turned into an extravagant wedding that the city's elite couldn't stop talking about. Among the hundreds of guests at the grand ceremony, there was one man who stood out: Hassan, Zaman's childhood friend and trusted confidant. Hassan was different from Zaman in many ways. While Zaman carried the weight of responsibility and tradition, Hassan had a carefree, adventurous spirit. He had spent years traveling, living abroad, and chasing excitement. His sharp features, dark eyes, and confident demeanor had always attracted attention wherever he went. Sahiba had noticed him even during the wedding. He was funny, attentive, and full of life, a stark contrast to the more composed and measured Zaman. But at the time, she hadn't thought much of it. It all started innocently. Hassan was a frequent guest at their mansion, often joining them for dinners or late-night conversations. Zaman would talk about his business ventures, while Sahiba and Hassan would laugh about lighter things: movies, travel, or silly childhood stories Hassan would share about Zaman. But then came a night that changed everything. Zaman had to leave for Abu Dhabi for an important business meeting. He would be gone for 2 days, and Hassan, always the loyal friend, stopped by to keep Sahiba company. It was late evening, and the city lights of Dubai sparkled in the distance as they sat on the balcony of the mansion. The cool breeze carried the scent of jasmine from the garden below. "I don't know how you live in this world of perfection," Hassan said, sipping his glass of sparkling water. Sahiba raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" "This house, the wealth, the expectations. It's like a golden cage, beautiful, but still a cage," he replied, his eyes meeting hers. Sahiba paused. No one had ever said something like that to her. She had spent her life surrounded by people who envied her status or admired her beauty. But Hassan didn't look at her like everyone else. He wasn't impressed by the chandeliers, the marble floors, or the designer clothes. "It's not a cage," she said softly, almost convincing herself. "It's stability." Hassan smiled, a hint of mischief in his expression. Stability doesn't always mean happiness. The conversation lingered in Sahiba's mind long after Hassan left that night. She found herself replaying his words, his voice, and the way his eyes had lingered just a second too long on hers. The next time Hassan visited, the atmosphere between them was different. Zaman was still out of town, and Hassan stayed longer than usual. They talked more openly now, their conversations dipping into personal thoughts and dreams. "I've always wondered what you wanted," Sahiba, Hassan said, leaning back on the velvet couch. "Not what your family or Zaman wanted, But Sahiba hesitated. It was a question no one had ever asked her. I don't know, she admitted. I've spent my whole life doing what's expected. I don't think I ever stopped to think about what I wanted. Hassan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. You deserve to feel alive, Sahiba, to be truly seen. Her heart raced at his words. There was something intoxicating about the way he spoke to her, like he could see through the layers of perfection she had carefully built around herself. The next day, Hassan invited Sahiba to a private yacht ride. At first, she hesitated. It felt wrong. But the temptation was undeniable. The thought of escaping the confines of her routine, even for a few hours, was too appealing to resist. The yacht sailed along the shimmering waters of Dubai's coastline. The city's skyline glowed in the distance as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sahiba stood by the railing, the wind playing with her hair, while Hassan poured 2 glasses of champagne.
To freedom, he said, handing her a glass. She laughed, the sound light and genuine. Freedom? What are you freeing me from? Yourself, he said simply, his gaze locking with hers. The air between them grew heavy. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, almost instinctively, Hassan stepped closer. Sahiba felt her breath hitch as his hand brushed against hers. You don't have to live by anyone else's rules, Sahiba, he said softly. And then, before she could think, his lips were on hers. The kiss was electric, a mix of passion and desperation. It was as though years of restraint and unspoken feelings had exploded in a single moment. From that day on, their relationship became a whirlwind of secret meetings and stolen moments. They met in quiet corners of the city, hidden from prying eyes. Hassan would take her to places she'd never been, quaint cafes, secluded beaches, and even bustling souks where they could lose themselves in the crowd. Each encounter brought them closer. Sahiba felt alive in a way she never had before. With Hassan, she could laugh, cry, and dream without fear of judgment. He made her feel seen, understood, and desired. Their nights together were filled with stolen kisses, whispered confessions, and the kind of intimacy she had never experienced with Zaman. Hassan's touch ignited a fire within her, a passion she hadn't known she was capable of. One night, as they lay tangled in each other's arms in a private villa Hassan had rented, Sahiba looked at him and asked, "Do you think we'll ever be free to be together?" Hassan stroked her hair, his expression serious. "I would give up everything for you, Sahiba. But are you willing to risk it all?" She didn't answer, but deep down, she knew the truth. She was already too far gone to turn back. For weeks, their affair continued, growing more intense with each passing day. Sahiba found herself inventing excuses to avoid Zaman, her heart pounding every time she thought about what might happen if he found out. But in Dubai's world of wealth and power, secrets don't stay hidden forever, and Sahiba and Hassan were playing a dangerous game, one that would soon spiral out of control. For weeks, Sahiba and Hassan lived in their bubble of forbidden love, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside their carefully hidden world. But secrets, especially in a city where whispers travel faster than the wind, rarely stay buried for long. Zaman had always been a man of routine. His days were filled with meetings, business deals, and maintaining the family's status. But in recent weeks, he noticed something he couldn't ignore: Sahiba's distance. She seemed distracted, her laughter hollow, her attention elsewhere. At first, he dismissed it as an adjustment to married life. But then came the missed calls, the vague excuses, and the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne. Zaman's suspicions began to grow. One evening, he returned home earlier than expected. The house was quiet, but Sahiba wasn't there. When he called her, her voice was hurried, the background noise hinting at a bustling cafe far from where she claimed to be. He knew something was wrong. The next day, Zaman confided in one of his trusted employees, a man named Rashid who handled security for the family. "I need to know where Sahiba goes when I'm not around," Zaman said, his tone sharp and controlled. "But keep it discreet." Rashid, loyal to the family, did as he was told. Within a few days, he returned with a report that shattered Zaman's world: photos of Sahiba and Hassan walking hand in hand through a quiet alley, a blurred image of them embracing near a private villa, and the final blow, a picture of them kissing under the dim lights of a hidden cafe. Zaman stared at the evidence in silence, his hands trembling with rage. His childhood friend, the man he considered a brother, had betrayed him. And Sahiba, his wife, his pride, had torn apart the foundation of his trust. That evening, Zaman confronted Sahiba. She was sitting in the grand living room, flipping through a magazine, when he stormed in, his face a mask of fury. "Where were you yesterday?" he demanded, his voice cold and cutting. Sahiba looked up, startled by his tone. "I told you I was shopping." "Don't lie to me," Zaman growled, throwing the photos onto the glass table in front of her. Sahiba's face drained of color as her eyes fell on the images. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "How long has this been going on?" Zaman demanded, his fists clenched at his sides. "How long have you been humiliating me behind my back?" Tears welled in Sahiba's eyes. "Zaman, I didn't mean for this to happen. I was." "Don't you dare try to justify this," he shouted, his voice echoing through the massive room. "With him? Hassan? My best friend?" Sahiba broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't plan this, Zaman. I was lonely, and you were always busy, and Hassan, he made me feel alive." Zaman stared at her, his anger momentarily giving way to disbelief. "You threw away our marriage because you felt alive? Do you even hear yourself?" The confrontation didn't end there. Zaman's anger simmered, but he didn't lash out physically. Instead, he left the house, needing time to think. But in the days that followed, the betrayal consumed him. He avoided Hassan, who was blissfully unaware that the secret was out. But Zaman couldn't stay silent forever. He arranged a meeting with Hassan at a private desert retreat under the pretense of discussing a new business venture. Hassan, unsuspecting, agreed. When they met, the tension was palpable. Zaman poured 2 glasses of whiskey, his movements calm and deliberate. "You know," Zaman began, swirling his glass, "I've always trusted you more than anyone else." Hassan smiled nervously, sensing something off. "You still can, Zaman. You're like a brother to me." Zaman's eyes darkened. "A brother doesn't steal another man's wife." Hassan froze, the color draining from his face. "Zaman, don't lie to me." Zaman roared, slamming his glass onto the table. "I know everything, the pictures, the lies, the betrayal. You thought I wouldn't find out?" Hassan tried to defend himself, stammering. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to happen." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" Zaman mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You didn't mean to stab me in the back? To humiliate me in front of everyone? It wasn't about you." Hassan said, his voice rising. "Sahiba and we care about each other. She's not happy with you." That was the final straw. In a fit of blind rage, Zaman lunged at Hassan. The 2 men grappled, their shouts echoing in the empty desert retreat. Zaman, fueled by anger and betrayal, overpowered Hassan, his hands tightening around his friend's throat. Hassan struggled, his eyes wide with fear, but Zaman didn't stop. The betrayal, the humiliation, it all came flooding out in that moment. When it was over, Hassan's lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor, the room eerily silent. Zaman stared at the scene before him, his chest heaving. The reality of what he had done began to sink in. He had killed his best friend, the man who had betrayed him in the worst way possible. But there was no time for regret. Zaman knew the consequences if this got out. He cleaned up the scene as best as he could, wrapping Hassan's body in a sheet and driving it deep into the desert. There, under the cover of darkness, he buried his former friend, the sand swallowing the evidence of his crime. When Zaman returned home, Sahiba immediately noticed the change in him. He was quieter, more distant, his eyes heavy with a weight she couldn't understand. "Where were you?" she asked cautiously. "Handling things," he replied curtly, brushing past her. Sahiba didn't press further, but a sense of dread settled over her. Something was wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that their carefully hidden world was about to crumble. The murder didn't go unnoticed for long. Hassan's family reported him missing, and soon the police were involved. Investigators combed through his last known whereabouts, and it didn't take long for them to link him to Zaman. The walls were closing in, and Zaman knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. The investigation into Hassan's disappearance began with urgency. Inspector Khaled Al-Mansour, renowned for his ability to uncover the truth, was assigned to lead the case. He started by gathering statements from Hassan's family and close acquaintances. They described Hassan as a man with no known enemies, someone deeply respected in their elite circles. However, his brother Faisal hinted at one intriguing detail. Hassan and Zaman were inseparable, Faisal explained to Khaled. If something's happened, Zaman might know more than he's letting on. Zaman was summoned for questioning. Khaled observed him closely during their first meeting. Zaman appeared calm, but his answers felt rehearsed, carefully measured. When asked about Hassan's whereabouts, he claimed the last time they had spoken was a week ago. He mentioned he was planning to take some time off, Zaman said. He sounded stressed, but nothing seemed unusual. Khaled pressed further, asking if Hassan had discussed any issues or conflicts. Zaman's response was dismissive. Hassan was a private man, he said. Even I didn't know everything about his life. Despite Zaman's calm demeanor, Khaled's instincts told him there was more to the story. Hassan's phone records revealed the last call he had made was to Zaman. This raised a red flag. Why hadn't Zaman mentioned this during his statement? Khaled obtained a warrant to search Zaman's properties, including his desert retreat. Forensics combed through the villa and surrounding areas, uncovering faint traces of blood on the floor near the sitting area. The forensics team confirmed it was a match for Hassan's DNA. When Khaled presented this evidence to Zaman, his composure began to crack. "This is ridiculous." Zaman snapped. "Hassan was like a brother to me. I had nothing to do with this." But the evidence spoke louder than his words. Surveillance footage from the retreat's nearby road showed Zaman's car leaving late at night, loaded with what appeared to be a large bundle. Under mounting pressure, Khaled shifted his focus to Sahiba. When questioned, Sahiba initially denied any knowledge of Hassan's disappearance. But Khaled was skilled at detecting lies, and her nervousness betrayed her. After hours of questioning, she finally admitted to the affair. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said, her voice trembling. "I was lonely, and Hassan, he made me feel seen. But I swear, I don't know what happened to him." Khaled continued to piece together the events leading up to Hassan's disappearance. Witnesses from a secluded cafe where Sahiba and Hassan often met provided damning testimonies. One employee mentioned Zaman confronting Hassan there just weeks before he vanished. The final breakthrough came when a local farmer near the desert retreat reported seeing Zaman digging late at night. The police revisited the area, this time with cadaver dogs. They discovered Hassan's shallow grave, his body wrapped in a sheet. The evidence was overwhelming. Zaman was arrested and brought in for interrogation. At first, he refused to speak, maintaining his innocence. But Khaled's relentless questioning eventually broke through Zaman's defenses. "I didn't plan for it to happen," Zaman admitted, his voice heavy with defeat. "I confronted him, and he didn't even deny it. He said Sahiba loved him, that she would leave me for him. I lost control. I couldn't think. He trailed off, his face buried in his hands." Khaled documented Zaman's confession in painstaking detail, the betrayal, the rage, the moment he decided to bury Hassan in the desert. It all painted a grim picture of a man consumed by his emotions. The case was brought before the Dubai courts, and the trial became a spectacle. The Sheikh family's involvement and the scandalous details of the affair made headlines across the UAE. The court found Zaman guilty of premeditated murder. The verdict was delivered swiftly: life imprisonment, a rare but appropriate punishment for a crime of such magnitude. Sahiba, though not directly implicated in the murder, faced public humiliation and the dissolution of her marriage. She left Dubai, seeking to escape the shadow of the scandal. As Zaman sat in his prison cell, the weight of his actions bore down on him. He had lost everything: his wife, his best friend, and his freedom, all because of a moment of uncontrollable rage. For Khaled, the case was a stark reminder of how love, betrayal, and pride could unravel even the most powerful lives.